You're now watching Winter Nightwolf Live, a Cliff Dive production.
OCO and greetings. I'm Winter Nightwolf, and this is Winter Nightwolf Live. My co-host is Sandra Hope, and she's Halawasaponi from North Carolina.
Hi, Jay. Hey, everybody.
Tell us just a little bit about who you are. Stolen Nations and all that. Sandra, can you hear me? I can't hear Sandra.
Hi, Jay. Welcome to Wednesday, everybody. Yeah, I'm Sandra Hope, Halawasaponi. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
I am so sorry. We're having an echo somewhere. So I'm not sure who's saying what at what time.
Okay. Okay, well, let's do this. We're waiting on Albert to come in the room. Oh, there he is. Hey, Albert.
Okay, yeah, I was waiting on to be brought into the room.
Okay.
So I'm here.
My guest tonight is my good friend for many years, attorney Albert Bender. Albert Bender is a Cherokee activist, historian, political columnist, and freelance reporter for Native and non-Native publications, and he's been doing it a long time. He was an organizer and a delegate to the first and second Intercontinental Indian Conferences in Ecuador and Guatemala. Recently, he has been an active participant and reporter in the Standing Rock struggle in North Dakota. He is an attorney, as I mentioned before, and is currently writing legal treatises on Native American sovereignty. He is also writing a book on crimes committed by the United States government against the Maya people of Guatemala, Civil War of the late 20th century. He is also the recipient of several Eagle Awards. I want one, Albert, by the Tennessee Native American Eagle Organization, and a former director of Native American legal departments and a tribal public defender. Hey, bro, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Jay. How are you this evening?
I'm still here. And that says a lot. That says a lot. So, Albert, you wrote an article recently, and I've got it right here in front of me. I'm not going to read all of it, but I want to read part of it. The article is titled, Chickens Coming Home to Roost. Remember what Malcolm said, January 28th. Violent protesters loyal to President Trump stormed the Capitol. The phrase the chickens are coming home to roost is well known and often attributed to African-American anti-imperialist revolutionary leader Malcolm X following the assassination of John Kennedy in 1963. This refers, of course, to mean that the wrongs committed by an individual or political entity will likewise have a boomerang effect and come back to punish the wrongdoing party. Now, Albert, we have had discussions, and everybody else has had discussions about this failed insurrection that happened on July the 6th at the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think one, that it was an attempted coup on the part of the fascist forces in the United States, and the buildup for this coup had been promoted by former President Trump by his continual lies and attempts to put forth a con game about how the election was taken from him. And this process went through the courts, 59 hearings, of which there was no evidence found of any type of widespread fraud or any real fraud to even speak of. But this was just another con game by the fascist Trump to maintain power. And the important thing I think for people to remember is another important thing to remember is that there were not really that many rioters at the Capitol on January the 6th. They were anywhere from 800 to maybe 1,000. And initially, the news media said there were tens of thousands of them, but there weren't.
No.
There was actually a comparatively small number when you talk about insurrections or people who were dissatisfied or believed Trump's con game. But it was an attempted coup. It was an attempt to stop the certification of Joe Biden as president. And this coup has to be severely punished. But that's exactly what it was. It was an attempt to overthrow the democratic processes of the United States.
Well, Albert, I've lived in Washington, D.C. most of my life, and I just happen to know a lot of people and a lot of people that are in law enforcement. And one of my buddies for years, we went to high school together, who is an official with the D.C. Police Department. I asked him, I said, they said there were over 10,000 rioters down there. He said, no. He said there was about 825 terrorists down there. I said, is that all? He said, yeah. He says, people that don't like, that are not like us, that are straight thinkers, people that go by the truth instead of a lie, they will say anything and pump up a lie to make it look a lot bigger than it is. My other thought on it, Albert, is that this fool, Donnie Boy, that's what I call him, was trying to imitate, in my opinion, the moves that Hitler made on the people of Germany during the Nazi warfare. And, I think he got in there and said, well, okay, I'm the king of the world now, and I'm going to keep this position. The man has got all kinds of mental illnesses, all kinds of criminal illnesses, which we will see come out in the papers and on the television and everywhere else, and especially in the courts in the very near future. I just don't understand how people would even fall for this kind of crap that this man put down. Albert?
Well, I think that's a very important point. And again, the point to be garnered from this is that, as you were pointing out in reference to what I was saying, is that it was only about 800 or a little over 800 people there who were attempting to a coup. And when you think about the number of people that were there, it was a comparatively small number of people who were falling for Trump's con game. And it would have been different if there had been tens of thousands of people there, but there weren't tens of thousands of people there. Comparatively speaking, in terms of what was attempted, it was a handful of people there, and they were, of course, incited and promoted by Trump to carry out these heinous actions. But what is also to be looked at is that there had been some type of something going on behind the scenes, so that there was a small Capitol police force there that made it look like there were actually more than there were, and the Capitol police force was overwhelmed to a large extent. by a small number of fascist supporters.
Well, you know, Albert, I was also thinking about this too, that as long as the United States, the Republic of the United States has been in existence, uh, the way it started out was with bloodshed, of course, of our people, genocidal practices, um, and racism. And when you wrote that article about chickens have come home to roost, this is what has happened because this, like I said before, this whole mess of a government was founded on bloodshed, slavery, and racism. So I think it finally came to a head with Trump being the one that was the head of it, and with all of his psychotic reactions to everything. And I think the world has got to see America for what it really is and how it has culminated over 600 years. And what does
Yes,
it?
I would agree completely in the
Yeah.
sense that this government was founded on genocide and slavery, and it has maintained itself by committing genocide and enslaving people across the planet. Look at what has happened in terms of the numerous coups that have been engineered by the United States against people's governments. Look what happened to Guatemala in the 1950s. Look what happened to Indonesia in 1965 to 66. Look what happened to the democratically elected government of Allende in 1973. And these are just a few of the many, many CIA sponsored coups which culminated in the deaths of not just tens of thousands of people, but in the deaths of millions of people. It's been
Billions of people.
estimated that 2 million people were killed in Indonesia when the government was overthrown. And this is what has maintained the US government since its inception, is the exploitation and the imperialist destruction of millions of people around the globe.
So Sandra, you're not seeing anything.
Yeah,
Come
I'm
on, co-host.
pondering. So I actually, Albert, we have a new
Turn your
administration.
volume up. Turn your volume up. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? So we have a new administration. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So we have a new administration now. Do you think that if we had a truly democratic administration, what are some of the things that administration might do to work with Latin America to improve things?
Well, I have seen, and I haven't had a chance to really read what Biden's new policy is toward Guatemala, but there was something online just 2 or 3 days ago. But I think that what needs to happen is a support and bolstering of the democratic processes in, say, a country like Guatemala. Guatemala is 60 to 70% indigenous, and it is composed of people of the Maya nationality. They speak 20 different dialects of the Maya language in Guatemala. I think that a new policy on the part of the US government, fostered by Biden, needs to come about. But we have to keep in mind that, and I think Biden is basically a good guy. I
Hmm.
think that Obama was basically a good guy. I think Obama's situation was that he didn't get as much accomplished as he hoped for, and surely didn't get as much accomplished as people like myself had hoped for. Because as one world spokesperson said in 2016, they said Obama's a good guy, but um, is he strong enough to stand up to the system? And that's what's going to happen with Biden. He's a good guy, but he's going to have to be strong enough to stand up to the system. And in order for him to stand up to the system, we're going to have to put some pressure on him to make him not just a good guy, but a better guy. We could have put more pressure on Obama to make him a better guy, but I think that it wasn't that Obama just failed us in many ways, but I think that we failed Obama. We needed to exert more people's pressure, and we on Obama need to do this with Biden in order to get to a process of where the U.S. government is operating for the benefit of people around the planet and not for the destruction.
And another thing about Obama is the day he took the oath, those Republicans and those hateful white congressional members put handcuffs on him and told him that we're not going to let you do anything.
Exactly.
Now, Biden is different. Although he's in the same predicament, Biden's skin is white, and that's relatable to most of the congressional members there. I don't look for him to be the great white hope. I don't look for him to be the savior of Black people. I don't look for him to be the savior of Native American people. But I look at him to make a difference based on what is really needed in this country. And one of the first things that's needed is a fight against racism. And education can change that, you know? I looked at all these ignorant fools that come running up in D.C. with these stupid looking flags, the Confederate flags, and just being nothing but a bunch of terrorists, tearing down centuries of history made in this republic. And I really think that these guys should be charged with treason along with their leader, Donald Trump. Now, you know how we talk about people that speak out of both sides of their mouths? McConnell, where in the world did this fool come from? He's going to vote to not impeach Trump, but minutes later he's on CNN giving an interview telling everybody that Trump is responsible for all of this. As long as you got people like that in Congress, it's always going to be confusion. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. And what Mitch McConnell has done, as you had indicated, he said that Trump should be acquitted based on constitutional grounds. And then he also said that Trump was morally and practically responsible for the January 6th terrorist acts. And he also, and I saw this online earlier today, he wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal attesting to the same line of thought. And now Trump has attacked McConnell. Lindsey Graham has come through to McConnell's defense, and it's like a chaos of clowns.
You talking about Lindsey Graham Cracker?
Yeah, Lindsey Graham Cracker. He's coming to the defense of McConnell, and I don't know where the Republican Party is going to on what the rocks of which shore they're going to land on soon, but they're in one heck of a mess and a situation of disorganization. Trump has said that he would think about forming a third party. 33% of the Republicans, registered Republicans, said that they would support him in forming a third party. But Trump, he's not going to form a third party because he's still got a vice-like grip on the Republican Party. Why go out and form another party when you've already got a party that's doing your beck and call?
Well, you know, I'm going to tell you something. For most purposes, the Republican Party is now destroyed to a point that it'll be 40 or 50 years before they'll get it back. people can see right through this mess. And the one thing that separates this republic from any other republic in the world is that we can make a change by registering to vote and make that change. Albert, I want to hit upon something else too. Let us talk for a minute about the missing and murdered indigenous women. If you are a citizen of these United States, comes a certain amount of protection under the law. And I don't see any protection under the law for these missing and murdered Native women, indigenous women. What's your thought on that?
You're absolutely right. And this really hits close to home for myself and my wife, because we lost a niece in September the 7th of 2018.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she was a member of the Hoopa Valley tribe in Northern California, and she was brutally murdered, and she was murdered off the reservation. And to this day, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office has produced no results in finding who committed the crime. In fact, I have periodically called them. In fact, periodically called them. The last call I made was earlier this week to the main detective on the case, name of Justin Brewer. And he said, Mr. Bender, he said, I remember you called before. And I said, well, look, have you gotten anything to tell us in terms of any suspects, any progress that's been made? He said, well, I can only tell you what I've told you before, that it's still an open case and there's nothing that I can disclose to you because it might jeopardize the investigation. I said, you have to understand, and I'm sure you do, that this is very disgusting to us from the standpoint of we don't see anything that you've done. And this is not just in the case of our niece, Angela McConnell, but for thousands of other Native women who are either missing or have been murdered. And the demographic of missing and murdered Native women is so undisclosed at this point. In fact, there are no figures on how many there actually are in terms of the United States and Canada. And so there's something that needs to be done. And I think that with Native American representatives in the government, such as Deb Haaland, Sharice Davis, and others, hopefully something will come about to bring results in this very heinous situation. But right now, it's like young Native women go missing and nothing is done.
They don't care. That's the problem. If it was some white girl, I guarantee you they would have some answers within 2 weeks. But as far as Native women, Black women, women that come from south of Texas, they don't give a damn. And to put more wood on the fire, what about Leonard Peltier? How long has he been in prison? For
He's been in prison.
No, he did not commit. He wasn't even there at the location.
Yeah, Leonard Peltier has been in prison for 45 years, since 1977. And something else I'd like to bring up before we move on in reference to missing and murdered indigenous women, there is a program that is now on TV called Big Sky.
Mm.
Yeah.
And this program, it revolves around missing and murdered young women, but these are all white women. And the setting for this series is the state of Montana. And Native people have written in and contacted the producers of this program to say that how can you talk about missing and murdered women in Montana without talking about Native women?
Native women, that's
And
right. Always
and in reference to Leonard Peltier, he's again has been in jail for 45 years. He will soon be 80 years old. And I'll tell you something else. This is something that I really have a chip on my shoulder about in reference to Obama. He denied Peltier's petition for clemency. Obama could have released Peltier from jail, but he did not. And again, Obama, although basically a good guy, he would not stand up to the system in that regard. But it's a racist outrage of what's happening to Leonard Peltier and the fact of the mass incarceration of Black, brown, and indigenous people in this country.
Sandra,
So-
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Back to the MMIWG concerns.
Can you get closer to the mic, Sandra?
Yeah. So back to the concerns about the missing and murdered Indigenous women. We know there's a correlation between man camps that are set up for the pipelines, and those workers at the man camps have access to Indigenous women. And there are, of course, jurisdictional law conflicts when it comes to things like that. So, we know that there are, when non-tribal judges and federal authorities, they decline to prosecute some of those people who commit those crimes when they're not native. So if you're native and you commit these crimes on native land, there's only so much tribes can do. There are certain limits on who they can actually prosecute on that tribal land. But those people who commit crimes that are above a certain level, non-tribal judges and federal authorities, I think last statistic I read was that they decline more than 39% of those. They decline to prosecute more than 39% of those crimes that are committed. So, I mean, what do you think is the primary reason for that? I mean, these are non-native men committing crimes against native women, and more than 39% of them are never prosecuted, and they're not allowed to be prosecuted by the tribal group.
Yeah, I think that one, as Brother Jay had brought out, that they just don't give a damn. They don't care. And what they try to make it sound like it's as if Native women are partially to be at fault themselves. They say, well, Native women, they go out, they party, they hitchhike up and down the roads, things like this. But
so those white girls, they do the same thing.
Exactly. But for California, where our niece was killed, they said it's 7 times less likely for any of the cases of missing and murdered Native women to be ever solved. Whereas they said if for white girls, 60% of those cases are solved. But they're not putting the resources into finding what happens to Native women. They're not paying any attention. It's like, as I said, when I called the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, it's going on 3 years now, 3 long years. And they've been telling me the same thing and the rest of the family for 3 years. Well, it's still an open case, and we're looking into it.
It's going to be an open case indefinitely because they don't give a damn. Albert, I need to see your face in the phone a little more.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
There you go. That's okay. So, you remember, Albert, do you remember when we used to have warrior societies within tribes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, if we take it upon ourselves to go out there and solve these problems, then the first thing they want to do is snatch us before a judge and say, you can't enforce the law because you're not a member of a police department or anything like that. But hell, if my sisters and my aunts and women are disappearing and they're finding them dead and raped and murdered, no, I think it's time for men within Native communities and tribes to stand up and go and protect the women. Damn what the white man says. Damn what the white man says.
Absolutely.
He's going to protect his women, even though he's guilty of misusing them, like Trump has done. But I think that if we see some movement on the part of Native men making an effort to not only solve these crimes, but don't allow these crimes to happen in the first place, then you'll see some movement.
Yeah, I think we need to go ahead.
On the part of local governments and the federal government, you'll see some movements.
Yeah, I think it needs to be a united effort in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a comment again about Leonard Peltier. Leonard, of course, wrote a book in prison, and it's called My Life as a Sundance. And a few years back, I was on a plane coming from Hawaii, got on flight in California, and sitting right beside us was Al Gore. And I was reading that book, and I was on, I don't know how many pages I'd read, but I was highlighting things. And when we got off of that plane, I went up to Al Gore and I said, you need to read this book. This man needs to be freed. And, he took it. He was polite. He took a picture. Whether he actually read it, I don't know. But it's a really well-written book Leonard wrote in prison.
Yes, I've read it.
I don't know. Maybe Al Gore read it, but I don't know what he could do about it. But
yeah, it's such a travesty of justice with what's happening to Leonard, because as I was reviewing the case again in reference to being on the program today, and he was convicted of aiding and abetting, and what makes it so contradictory is that the persons that he was convicted of aiding and abetting, they were found not guilty of the killing of those two FBI agents by reason of self-defense. So what crime was he aiding and abetting? I mean, if you review the case, it makes no sense legally.
Well, you know what? When the FBI agent was being questioned by Kunstler, and he said to the FBI agent, he said, did Mr. Peltier have a hand in killing the two FBI agents? And his reply, this is the FBI agent, well, we really don't know who killed the agents, but an Indian is guilty, and that Indian is Leonard Peltier. You're going to charge the man with these murders only because he's an Indian? And they knew the facts. Leonard was nowhere near the jumping bull camp at the time that happened. So, another travesty of the United Snakes of America. Albert.
As I heard somebody say years and years ago, if the FBI couldn't get the Indian they wanted or the Indian that they thought they wanted, they just got any Indian that they could.
That's right. That's what
they just framed anybody they could easily could frame, or not easily frame, but any Indian they could frame, because going over the case legally, analyzing it again, it makes no sense. he should have been. He should have never been convicted to begin with.
Well, Albert, just like you and I are friends, another one of my close friends was Dennis Banks. And lots of times when Dennis Banks came to Washington, D.C., he stayed at my house. And we had conversations about that. And I think it was like maybe a month before Dennis died, I had a conversation with him. I said, "Do you think that Leonard's going to ever get out of prison?" He said, "Yeah, when they carry him out to bury him." They still look upon us as being less than human. So let's move on to another subject, Albert. DAPL, the pipeline, which is the culprit.
Yeah.
It's a culprit. It's destroying people's lands, only for a profit to pump the oil out, and that oil is not for consumption in the United States. They're selling it abroad.
You're right.
And they're destroying people's land. They have this horrendous amount of gigantic oil spills very often. And then it's a culprit because of the man camps and the missing and murdered women. Just go on and express yourself, Albert. I'm gonna lay out of this and listen to you.
Atlantic Coast Pipeline,
Yeah.
Yeah, those
running
pipelines.
through-
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I'm familiar with also the Atlantic Coast pipeline, and I think that DAPL is probably right now the most infamous of the pipelines. Biden, shortly after taking office, he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, and he's being asked by Native people across the country, in particular the people of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation, to cancel the DAPL pipeline. And on February the 10th, just a few days ago, the case went back before a federal judge. And the backdrop of that was that about a month before, Judge James Boasberg, who had ruled against Standing Rock again and again and again, issued a favorable decision saying that the pipeline should be shut down immediately because it was operating illegally because it did not have a permit. DAPL appealed that decision, got another federal judge to say it's operating illegally, but let the oil continue to flow until there's another decision. So it went back to court on February the 10th, and I haven't had a chance to look at this judicial decision in depth, but it didn't make any sense. They postponed the hearing until, I believe, April the 9th. They gave it a 52-day delay, saying that the U.S. Corps of Engineers, they would be given that 52 days in which to decide to shut it down or decide, because it was operating illegally, to look at other means of rendering a decision. Now, the U.S. Corps of Engineers, they're the ones who have been allowing this to go on, and to give them the option of shutting it down within 52 days, if I've read the reports correctly, is tantamount to letting a fox decide whether or not he's going to stop raiding the chicken coop.
Yep. And it's strange you said that, because just next door to me, my neighbors, they have chickens. Mm-hmm. And a couple of weeks ago, I heard something at night go, pow, pow, pow. So the next day I heard the discussion that the foxes had gone up underneath the fence and buried their way into the hen house, and they got caught. Well, same principle, Keystone, XL, DAPL, and the Atlantic Pipeline, you know, you keep running into difficulty because you know you're wrong by taking this oil out of the ground, and then it's not even benefiting the people of the Republic of the United States. You're selling it to China and everywhere else just for $1. Same principle of those
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, you know, it just goes on and on and on. It's a vicious circle of wrong, breaking the law. But guess what? Those that do it, they make a profit.
And
Albert,
those that
your
try
face is
to,
out of camera again.
oh, I'm sorry.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. And for those that try to uphold the law, and I'll give you an example. I was at the Standing Rock protest in 2016 as a reporter, giving information and disclosing what was happening to people who were demonstrating against the pipeline. And
Mhm.
I want to make this connection, just going back to what happened on January the 6th. Gosh, the racist, fascist rioters were given free rein to go into the Capitol. But for those of us that were protesting DAPL in 2016, we were exposed to all types of racist outrages. We were jets of water were sprayed on people. Rubber bullets were fired at people. The police forces used the utmost force in order to fight against and oppress and commit atrocities against people who were upholding the law.
That's right. Protecting
The
the water.
same principle that started 600 years ago is continuing today. But since you mentioned January 6th, Albert, did you know that one of the congressional members from Mississippi filed a lawsuit against Trump because of his involvement in the incitement of the riot that happened on the 6th, supported by the NAACP? That was just
Yes,
the day
go
before
ahead.
yesterday. And the same day, the KKK filed suit against Trump because of his involvement and incitement of it and helping to bring KKK members to Washington, D.C. to participate in that riot. Did you ever think, Albert, that you would see the KKK and the NAACP file the same kind of lawsuit against the same individual? Did you ever think you would see that in your lifetime?
Yeah, that was one for the books, as they say. And I was aware of the NAACP and the representative from Mississippi filing a suit against Trump, but I wasn't aware that the KKK was also filing a suit against Trump. That's one for the books.
Well, you know what? It was some of Trump's organizations that actually paid for the buses that brought a lot of them here. And their complaint is that you got them here in D.C. and then you got them in trouble.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of some of his supporters, Trump supporters, have become disillusioned with him because he's now trying to, in one form or another, disclaim responsibility for what happened. There was one lady white lady who caught a special plane to go to D.C. to join the rioters, and she asked, after she had been arrested, that Trump issue her a pardon before he left office, which as far as I know, he didn't respond. But some of the rioters feel abandoned by Trump now.
Well, that was a wake-up call within itself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's really strange that that things are happening like they're happening, but to me they're expected because I know the devil and I know how the devil dances. So it's all about money. They don't give a damn about people. It's all about the bottom line to them.
Yeah, well, what has dumbfounded me to a large extent is that as bad as Trump has been, he got 74 million votes. Biden, of course, got 81 million, which he won the election
Hmm.
fair and square, but 74 million people voted for Trump. And the way I look at it is that his hallmark was the call to racism because he worked against the interest of the majority of the people in this country. He was against uh, spoke against climate change. He was
Oh, that's a
against
hoax.
Social Security. He tried to take 700,000 people off of food stamps before he left office. It seems like he hates everything, including nature, but 74 million people voted for him, and majority white people, of course. But I mean, his hallmark was racism, and a question of how do you deal with 74 million people who hate their fellow citizen.
You know what, Albert? Talking about the welfare rolls, we know because we are informed that the majority of the people on welfare are not black folks, are not Indians, but poor white people.
You're absolutely right.
Are those the same? I'm wondering, are those the same ones that are marching in lockstep with him? And they're going to lose their benefits, their welfare checks, their Medicare, and everything as a result of his efforts. My question to you people, I don't like to use that because they've used that on us, but I'm going to say it anyway. My question to you people that are poor and white, that have lost your jobs, that you can't get any help, why is it, or is there some kind of a snow job that this man has put on you? Did he hypnotize you to follow his mess? This man don't give a damn about you. So why do you still support his dumb excuse my French.
A crooked letter, crooked letter.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, Albert, we're actually running out of time here. I want to ask you real quickly, what's
Hmm.
based on your experience with the law and with things that we are trying to change in this country, what is the most effective way do you think we can put pressure on the Biden Harris administration to fix these things or to make some progress in these things, to change, what's been happening, to make it better? What's the most effective way for us to put that pressure on them? Because I agree, I don't think it's going to happen unless they get pressured. I don't think they're just going to do it by default.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I thank you for asking that. I think what we need to really do is work for putting forth a united front or a people's coalition, as it were, composed, of course, of indigenous people, black people, white people, brown people, yellow people, the decent people of this country, because I know that the majority of people, including the majority of white people, are decent people. But we
Right.
need to put in motion a strong, united people's front to exert pressure on the Biden Harris team to do the right thing, do what is right for the people of this country. Because if we don't, we're going to get an administration that I think is going to be more middle of the roadish than it could be progressive. We need to keep them on the right foot, so to speak, in terms of doing what's right for the people of this country. And if we don't, then it's not just going to be their failure, it's going to be our failure also.
Well, Sandra, I want to thank you for being my co-host this evening. Did a good job. And Albert, I can't thank you enough, man. We've been friends for years. And I always, excuse me, I always knew what was going on in your head every time I see an article that you write. And I'm honored to have you for my friend and my brother for so long. And we got a long way to go, Albert. So, will you come back again, bro?
Oh yeah, be glad to, brother. 1,000 wattos to you, and 1,000 wattos also to Sandra.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
And
much.
just in case you folks don't know what Watto means, that's the Cherokee word for thank you. And to all of you, Wado. Talk to you next week.
Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
Albert, for coming. Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Albert.
My pleasure.
Have a good week, everyone.